The next part of decision making, we're going to look at the switch statement. The switch statement lets us test a variable's value for several different conditions. When we use the switch statement, it's really like putting multiple if statements together. The switch statement allows us to test a variable's value for different conditions. So with the if statement, we checked for one condition. When we use a switch statement, we're able to check for multiple different conditions. And then depending on that condition, we will continue with our execution of the code. It's extremely important with the switch statement that all possible outcomes are tested for. If we have a value that we don't test for, what will our program do when it gets to that point that it hasn't tested for that value? The switch statement allows us to use at the end the default option. The default option pretty much means when all else fails, do this. The switch statement gives us this possibility of making decisions. We test the condition in our first case. If that condition is true, we execute that piece of code. If the condition isn't true, we test the second case. If it's true, execute the code associated with that case. And we continue on through that process, checking. When all else fails, we hit the bottom, which is the default option, execute that code. But if one of those cases was true before, the code would have executed related to that case, and the switch statement comes to an end. Let's have a look at an example of the switch statement in process. We have a variable, number of siblings. In this case, we say it's an integer, which makes sense. There's usually only whole siblings, and we have two of them. And we perform our switch on the number of siblings, and we say case 0. So if that number of siblings is 0, we discover they're an only child. If that case of 1, we say it's possible that they have a brother or a sister. Case 2, they have 1 or 2 siblings, okay? Or if none of those values that we specifically tested for are true, we come to our default option and we simply say in this case, wow. Switch also gives us the ability to compare in a range. So we look for a value of our variable within a range. Let's take a look at that in some code. We have two pieces of code here in front of us. Both pieces of code actually do the same thing, but in a slightly different testing of our case. So the code on the left-hand side, we have case 0, ... less than 2. We're looking to see if the value of our variable is 0 or 1. If we look to the code on the right-hand side, we have case 0, ... 1, doing the same thing as what's done on the left-hand side. And we can work down those case statements looking at it. 2, between 2 and less than 5, or on the right-hand side, between 2 and 4. The third case, 5, between 5 and less than 8, or on the right-hand side, between 5 and 7. So they're different ways of going about doing a similar thing, but it's highlighting the ability to use a range. As you can see, there are different ways we can use the switch statement to achieve a similar outcome.